First, we want to thank you, Travis and Eric, for giving TiC the opportunity to talk to you guys about your new game, Rebel Galaxy. It seems like so far this generation, we're starting to get on consoles these awesome space epic, type of games and everything like that. And with your guys' history, everybody's excited about the title. I mean, so many people are excited about the title, including myself, because I grew up a very huge Wing Commander fan. Very big Wing Commander fan.
Oh, yeah, man. Of course.
So, just to get people to understand what this is all about, tell us about your game and pretty much what is the primary goal of this epic?
So, I mean, if you're going to describe the game, especially if you've got familiarity with Wing Commander, it's like taking the naval combat from Assassin's Creed and smashing it together with Wing Commander Privateer. That's more or less the general gist of the game. So you got a lot of your classic space traders stuff.
I'd say it's kind of an open world space adventure where you're a starship commander and you kind of set your pace. We have a storyline, but you can go out and do what you want in this space universe. Mostly that involves a lot of space combat.
One of the great things, like I said, about this generation, you have games like No Man's Sky, you have Elite Dangerous coming to the Xbox One. What in particular do you think separates Rebel Galaxy from those games?
I think there's quite a few things that separate it, honestly. I mean, Elite is your more classic
sim. It's more of a sim.
Right.
Yeah. And you're in a cockpit, it's a single seater, and you're in this, vast universe, and they have a lot of focus on kind of realism and scale. And there's a lot of very kind of simulation-y detail to what they're doing. They're really striving for realism, which I think is really cool. And the No Man's Sky is that sort of vast, limitless universe with this super awesome, yes painting thing going on. And Rebel Galaxy is not really like either of those. One, it's not a fighter game at all, and it doesn't play like a fighter game. I mean, Assassin's Creed, I think, is the closest thing we can point to, but it's even quite a bit different than that because you get all the cool space stuff, and you're not in a boat that only fires cannons. But
so you're the commander of a starship and not a pilot of a spaceship. You've got a lot more weapon systems and bigger guns, and you fight larger ships. You command a large ship yourself. It's got tons of turrets on it and broadside guns and secondary weapon systems and all these things.
Which those turrets they're customizable, right? The turrets.
Oh yeah. You have your own turrets.
That's where the RPG elements come in, which I really like.
Yeah.
And you can drive any of those turrets, so you can switch between stations on your ship at will. So you can get to kind of the Millennium Falcon camera where you're blowing away individual fighters or shooting mines to detonate them near other things, or you can go back to broadsides, and then they'll switch to AI. So it's definitely action-based. I mean, you don't point and click and wait for things to happen. It's definitely an action game, but it doesn't play anything like a normal space sim, which is really cool. It's nice to be working on
it's a space. It's a space action shooter.
Yeah, you can still trade and smuggle and mine and be a pirate and join the military and join the Merchants Guild and respond to distress beacons and explore, and there's still all this other like space tradey stuff like you'd have in a privateer or an elite, but it doesn't have the same focus on kind of I don't want to say realism, but it's not realistic at all.
Right.
So the scale of our universe is like explorable. We want you to constantly be running into stuff. We don't want you to go for like 10 minutes because that's what space is like at really high speeds and you see nothing.
Right.
We want you to constantly be stumbling across ships or a nebula or, an asteroid field filled with miners that you can decide to steal their stuff.
And that in itself right there, that's where your game will stand out versus like Elite Dangerous with this similistic style approach.
The other thing that we've got going on, I think, is that we have characters in our game, and all the other space games that are coming out right now are generally more focused on you, and you're in a ship, and you don't really talk to other people. You don't really interact with them except maybe in a comm every once in a while. In ours, you actually see them, you get off on stations, you meet them at bars, you intimidate them, you insult them, you demand that they give you your stuff. So there's alien races that you talk to, they're voiced, they're lip synced, and it's all tied into a faction system. So how you treat everybody actually changes the way the game plays. I think currently in every single story mission so far, you can actually finish the missions without fighting if you want to.
You're making this game. You're making this game sound so epic, man.
It really does already.
I'm serious. I'm getting excited over here.
So it's all. I think if you sit down and play the games, they're both so different. At the end of they're both in space and their lasers show up, and there's planets, but that's the basics. Everything else is pretty different. What else? It's got a weird soundtrack. It's got a blues rock soundtrack. It's very, Firefly, Cowboy Bebop. It's got a very different vibe. It's not. There's no space epic music. It's a different thing. It's about being like a space outlaw.
That's awesome. So not okay. You're the commander of your eventually, I assume, your own, starship.
You start off with your own starship. It's just a junker. Gotcha. And you're going to want to get bigger and better ones and bolt better stuff onto them. And so there's lots of different ships you can get and fly. Some of them are gated off by what factions you're friendly with. So you have to kind of get in with certain factions to get access to certain ships, and then you can throw them over and go back to doing whatever you want. But
right now, here's something. Obviously, when you look at the other two games, and not to continue to compare, but when you look at the other games, there's Elite Dangerous, you're not able to get out your ship, and in No Man's Sky, you're able to get out your ship. But the great thing about that is that you guys actually have these NPCs that you can interact with, that you can talk to, negotiate with. Now, is there any way that we'll be experiencing gun battles besides ship battles, or is it just more of a negotiation conversation thing?
Definitely not. You don't actually get out and walk around as like an NPC.
Gotcha.
You never see your character at all, in fact. So it's a lot closer to something like Privateer, where you go off onto a station and there's different scenes that you go between. There's like the bar and the commodities market and the mission board and the guild office and whatever. And then there's characters in there that you can elect to talk to.
Nice.
Yeah, it's more adventure-y and not. So we're never going to be on-foot gun battles. There's never going to be like a first-person element to it. We're only like two dudes. There's only so much game we can pull off. So
you guys doing amazing things for two people, man. I'm really blown away.
I think Elite is actually going to have getting off on the stations and walking around. I think that's on their
that's on their list.
Agenda.
Yeah. I think by the end of the fall they may have that. Now as an independent developer, just you two guys working on this game, and getting into the Idea Xbox program, has it been a difficult transition? Just because it's two of you guys, sometimes we've heard that, it's been difficult, or no, they've been able to help with the transition. And so far, what you guys have shown has been really, really awesome.
So I don't think there's really been much issue with the transition. It's actually been pretty pleasant development. We ported real early to get the engine running. We hired out Blitworks, who did, I think they did the Bastion ports and like several others. I'm spacing it off the top of my head, but they did an early engine port for us, and then we just kind of optimized it and kept rolling with it. So it's been running on the Xbox One for quite some time, and just at the end of every week, we make sure it still works right. So it really hasn't been that painful. We designed the game for controllers from the beginning, so there wasn't this big adjustment where we had to figure out, oh my God, how are we going to make this work?
Yeah, I mean, day to day, we kind of have PC as our main platform, but from day one, we've used the Xbox controller, so the controls and everything match identically. We get some help from this port house Travis was talking about to actually make it perform well and do all the standard requirements. So it is just the two of us, but we do contract out help from some other people like that, and for some artwork, and for some of the music. So the company is just two of us, but we haven't done 100%. We've only done 90%.
Oh, I mean, listen, for two people, that's an amazing feat. I mean, I already like what you guys have done and what you've shown and what you're talking about has me interested. Yeah. Now, for me, and I think for most guys who are into the RPG aspect of a game like this, customization is very, very important. So you said that you're able to customize your cannons, but do you have the ability to design the ship, or maybe get different ship designs, different architecture designs, add guns anywhere you want, different type of weapon types, color schemes? Will that be available in the game?
So there's a ton of different base ship types, from little corvettes to big dreadnoughts. So you can fly little, more nimble ships all the way up to really enormous, turrets all over them ships. You can customize your broadsides, your engines, your shields, your hull, your boosters, your deflectors, every individual turret. Different ships all have different hardpoint layouts. So this ship might have, X number of side-mounted turrets, a couple tops, one on the bottom, and you customize all of those. You can also set the AIs on all of those to do specific things when you're not controlling them. So you can say, I want my missile turret on the top to only attack fighters when I'm not doing anything with it.
Wow.
You can. There's also secondary weapons, so you have things like flak and broadside missile arrays and mines and EMPs.
You got the mag beams too, where you can pick up the damaged ship's parts that you destroy.
Yep.
Which I really like.
You can get tractor beams. You can pull in cargo and you can scavenge containers and pick up stuff. You can some of this stuff's illegal, so you jettison it if the military is coming by because they'll demand it, but then you can try and bribe your way out. Anyway, I'm deviating from like the upgrade stuff, but there's lots and lots of components to change out. The ships all have different base properties, so they all fly pretty differently, and a lot of them are really geared toward like a specific kind of play. If you're like a bounty hunter kind of person, you usually want kind of like smaller, more nimble things that are heavily armored and have moderate weapons. If you're a trader, you want some big heavy thing with a giant hold and turrets all over it. So you end up kind of customizing which kind of ship base that you're using, and then you bolt on all kinds of different stuff depending on what you want to do.
You also mentioned paint schemes, and we do have a bunch of different paint schemes for each of the models, but we're not sure how we're going to actually use that yet. We're still not done making the game, but we probably will be able to buy cool looking skins.
Okay, that'll work as well.
Oh yeah,
that'll definitely work. Yeah. That'd be nice. I think fans would love that, being able to, because when you play a game like that, and I think it's something that in today's generation, in the new generation, fans always want things to be their own. The more they can customize things, the more they can paint it, design it, color it, it makes it feel like it's really theirs. It's really them in the game. They're owning the game. So, things like that is very important. Now, what's really awesome that I've read up on is your solar system design. Everybody's has these different designs with their solar system and the progression of it. How does your solar systems work and exploration work?
So the game's made up of multiple solar systems that are all chained together with jump gates. So as you go through the game, you'll go from solar system to solar system. Those solar systems are all randomly generated. So when you make a new game or somebody else plays a game, they play in a different one than you're in. So the planets will be different, the layouts where asteroid belts and ice fields and minefields and all that, it'll all be varied. There's a main story that's always the same story that will take place in kind of different locations that kind of wends its way through that series of solar systems. But then you just do side stuff all over the place.
Yeah, I think a big difference with our game and these other ones you mentioned is that, again, we're not looking for a realistic universe. Instead, we want you're flying around and you see cool things. I mean, you see, there's a weird-looking asteroid field and a strange nebula. Let me go check that out, see what's in there. or people will like radio you down while you're flying and say, hey, give us some help over here. We're fighting some pirates, or you just come across mysteries, and it's very much more like a lush, filled-in world of all kind of cool stuff. It doesn't feel like you're out just in black space, far away from everything else. So the fact that it's randomly generated and there's just all this stuff was just this great feeling of exploration as you just wander around this solar system and find cool things to do.
You know what? The more y'all talk about this game, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of an old Dreamcast game called Armada. I don't know if y'all remember that.
Somebody's mentioned that before. I don't know. Myself.
It's just top-down. It's a top-down shooter. I mean, you viewed it that way, but it had a lot of the same elements that Rebel has. I loved it. And you guys are bringing this. You guys are bringing this into 3D. So this has really got my interest, man. I lost a lot of hours to that game. So I'm excited.
I think I'm gonna lose a lot of hours of this game.
Yeah, I already have.
Yeah, definitely.
We still like playing it, so that's good.
No. I think a lot of fans are gonna like playing it. We definitely need more variety like this on consoles. It's not always about the next open world game or the next action adventure game, but just a variety of different things to play to give you a different perspective on stuff. This is really you're really in a game market that's not oversaturated.
Yep, that's nice.
Yeah, I think
you guys are doing good.
It's almost, it would be too risky for a big company to make a game kind of like ours. I mean, I think the game's going to be great, but it's kind of hard to know if there's going to be a huge audience or just a good size audience. And we're okay with just a niche audience and people who really like it. But big companies have a harder time making a game that's so weird like our game, because you just can't guarantee a mega success. So I think that's it really helps that we're just two guys with a limited budget. And, the game's going to be great, but it doesn't have to be a blockbuster. It just has to be really cool for a lot of people.
Some of the best games are in blockbusters. Ori and the Blind Force is an amazing game. And, I mean, I'm sure it didn't have the greatest budget in the world for it, but it's definitely an amazing game. And I think you guys are right on the right path. Now, question. You guys said it's similar to Mass Effect. Is there a karma system? Bad, good, certain choices that you make can decide what direction happens in the galaxy? Are there factions?
Yes. So there's every solar system has its own factions. You can see your alliance with those factions at any time, whether you attack them or help them or rescue someone in distress, or whether you just call them and insult them. That all affects your faction and what they'll say to you if you talk to them and how they'll treat you if you run into them. There's a functional economy that changes over time, and the economy is affected by what you do. So the example I always give is if there's a famine on a planet, somebody will send food from another planet, and you can track that ship and steal the food and blow up the ship, and then the famine keeps going, and you can go sell your ridiculously expensive food on the planet.
What?
Some deep-rooted story elements to this game. I'm getting that.
It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever played Sid Meier's Pirates, but...
No, actually.
There's like a Clockwork World thing where you've got like little ships go from place to place, and each has a purpose, and all of the little cities have their own, current status that's affected by those events, and then you can intersect with those events, change them, and you change the way what's going on in the world, and then you could capitalize on it. And so you've got a lot of that going on.
Now, with such a vast universe, obviously it's all about gameplay. It's all about how long are we playing. What do you think? I know the game's not done. I know you guys have some ways to go, but what do you think the gameplay amount of hours is going to be like?
To a certain extent, it'll depend on how you play.
Right.
So I think Eric was saying that takes about 6 hours to finish the content for the first solar system right now.
Whoa.
Yeah. 5 or 6 hours, and then we'll probably have at least 5 or 6 main systems that you have to go through.
Nice.
And then spur systems.
Wow, nice.
Then there'll be spur systems that are side systems, so
yeah, you can just kick around and do your own thing and spend a lot of time. And even after you finish the main storyline, there's still more upgrades to get and still bigger ships to go fight. So really, it's kind of got a lot of play even after, the 20, 30, 40-hour story.
Well, and because it's randomized and you can play through again and choose kind of a different path to go, I mean, the missions branch invisibly in lots of places. You'll be talking to someone and they'll just ask you a question, and depending on what you answer, you're going to end up doing different things. We don't actually call that out either. It just happens.
Wow.
Hey, guys, I got I got to get running to the airport. I'm sorry. It was great talking to you. I'm going to leave the talk in the very capable hands of Travis, though.
No, thanks, Eric.
All right, man.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, hope to talk to you guys again.
Definitely.
Yeah. Good luck, guys. See you.
Have a good flight, Eric.
I mean, everything you're saying so far has me hooked. I'm sure a lot of fans listening is like, wow, I didn't know the game was this deep, or I didn't know the game had this much going on for it. Is there a multiplayer aspect to it, or is it just a straight single-player campaign?
This one is straight single player. There's no way we could pull off multiplayer in all this, honestly, because we're launching on like 4 platforms.
Right.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of details into the single player experience too. With 2 people, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that we do. I mean, we allow you to pause and scan objects, and there's a lot of things that don't necessarily lend themselves particularly well to multiplayer. At least not, it would probably have to be some sort of like side mode. But yeah, that we didn't figure we'd pull that off on PC, Mac, Xbox One, and PS4.
Right. No, we understand that. I mean, you have a 2-man team. There's only so much you can do, and so far, you guys have done a lot. So, and another great thing about that is that it seems that we're losing the single-player game. There's so many multiplayer games nowadays, and I think people enjoy the social, interactive aspect of it, being able to play with your friends, but I think sometimes when you have single-player games, it becomes more immersive. You don't have somebody chatting in your ear. It's just you and the solar system trying to be a badass. You can
engage. You can engage in the story a lot more.
Yeah, for a lot of adventure kind of games, I mean, the multiplayer ends up being a bolt-on thing. It's not the main game, and often they have a whole separate team that just works on that, so that it can, because it's tough to. All the time you spend working on multiplayer is time you don't spend working on single player is what it gets down to. And it's features that don't go into the main game unless you're large enough to be able to afford to kind of do that side development of a whole other multiplayer mode. So it's always just not trivial, especially for random things. So with Torchlight, we didn't do multiplayer the first game, and then we did it for the second one. And what a pain in the ass. So much more complicated. It's so much more difficult to develop. Especially for an action-based game. Because when you're in, just to talk a little bit about it, like the complexity of it, when we get into space battles, it's not like most, combat sims. If you're playing Elite or something, there's a couple ships around and you're generally focusing on a couple of ships at a time. When we get into battles, you're fighting like 30 fighters and 10 capital ships. And they're all firing at like machine gun rates. So the number of projectiles moving and objects moving is really, really large.
There's a lot going on in those space
and
battles.
Dealing with that in multiplayer where you're in a solar system that's contiguous where you can fly from one side to the other and there's thousands and thousands of ships all flying around, it starts to get difficult to conceive of how you would have it be multiplayer for the main campaign anyway. You can talk about things like, we would do just like a combat mode where you could just take some ships and go fight against your friend only. But then you lose a lot of what makes the game too. So,
yeah, you could always think about it for future iteration.
Yeah, that's what we always say for the sequel.
Yeah, for the sequel. Yeah,
that's right.
I think maybe just to have one other ship as just like a co-op element would be pretty cool. But you know.
So, the progression system. There's 2 really big things I want to ask you. I mean, as a person that knows everything about treasure. About being the treasure hunter and getting that rare piece of equipment and the progression system as far as making your ships stronger, more powerful. How does that work? Are there places that you can go, planets you can explore, or just hunting other ships to get the right treasure to make your ship, a badass? So
you can get components by buying them. You can get them as mission rewards. You can get them by stealing them. And there's a certain amount of rarity in just where they're available too. So, if you want to get a smuggler's hold for your ship so that the military can't scan you, you can't just buy it at any station. You actually have to become friendly with pirates, go to a pirate station, and find one and buy it. Unless you get it through some other means, like stealing it from someone. So it's not like... it doesn't work in the same way that you'd have like traditional like MMO loot.
Right.
It's very economically based. The main way that you progress in the game is like financial. The more cash you can accrue, the better stuff you can get.
Right.
But that's not to say that you can just buy it anywhere. and certain things you just can't buy. So there's a pretty wide variety of weaponry types and component types. Especially as far as the weapons go, all of them have very different properties and advantages and drawbacks. And you can spend a good bit of time trying to find just the right stuff to bolt on.
Right. That's going to be great. I think fans are going to love that.
When you go to the space stations, how is that controlled exactly? Is it just menu based or?
It's kind of menu and scene based. So you'll dock with the space station and you end up basically in the hangar. And from the hangar, it's a scene and you have like options where to go. So one will be like the bar. There's always a bar because we have bars everywhere.
Gotta have a bar.
Yeah.
And when you're in a bar, then you can talk to the bartender. You can get like bounty tips. You can pay them and find out where there's any local bounties you might be able to hunt. You can usually hire mercenaries. There's a news board where you can find out events like famines or wars or things that affect the different economies and cause different things to happen in the solar system. You can see what's up. You can also go to the commodities market where you can see how different commodities have been trending over the past, I think, 16 days. You can buy and sell stuff. You can go to mission boards. You get like side non-story missions. If there's story missions there, you'll meet different characters and talk to them and pick up stuff to do. There's shipyards where you can go and see what other kinds of ships you can buy. And these you don't wander through halls to do this stuff. It's all pretty quick. You don't spend any time docking. You hold a button and you dock and you're docked. So it's fairly snappy. But there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of data to consume, I guess.
Right. Well, as we getting close and coming to the close, I just have two final questions. Before I do, Mike, is there anything you want to ask?
Why the decision for I think it's only lateral movement, no horizontal movement?
You are all on the plane, so it's you never pitch.
Okay.
And it's because of the scale, because the combat is very broadside based.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine if you were playing, if you had a pirate ship that could point upward and then fly up in the sky, trying to line up your cannons to shoot another ship.
Right.
I got you.
And a lot of people hear that and then they're concerned that, it's been dumbed down or it's not, this is going to be very simplistic. But once you play it, it's not simple at all because you don't contend with a single ship to fight.
Yeah, no, I've seen the gameplay and it makes sense when I'm looking at it. It does make sense. Okay.
So anything that's smaller than you, that's non-capital size, so gunships down to fighters, don't have those restrictions. So they can fly wherever they want.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But that's why so think of it like World War II naval combat. That's maybe a better thing than pirate combat because you remember those old big World War II battleships? They'd have turrets, giant turrets mounted on the top, and then you've got planes flying in and strafing them.
Right.
And then you've got submarines down below.
Right.
Think about that because that's probably the closest I can get to describe.
Oh yeah, and you never see them going up and down. You don't traditionally ever see that.
Right.
Yeah.
And think about a Star Wars space battle where all the Star Destroyers are going in weird directions.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Right. So, in a nutshell, why do you think gamers should buy your game?
Because there isn't anything else like it, and it's a lot of fun.
That's right. I hear that.
That's simple answer, man.
That's a simple answer. That's right. Go ahead.
And it's gonna be like $20. So
no, you can't beat that price. You can't beat any price like that. That's gonna be great. So when can we expect to see it? Will it be
It's gonna be this year.
Awesome.
It's gonna be this year. So we're trying to get a kind of a streamer and press build done for PCs here in the next couple weeks. Mm-hmm. Because we're basically feature complete at this point. It's about getting the rest of the content in and making sure the missions are done right and getting the rest of the dialogue written. And so we'll announce a more firm date when we're pretty sure of what that date is.
Right.
Nice.
Okay. And you said dialogue. Is that dialogue, that's all written dialogue, not voice acted?
No, that's voice acted.
Really?
So now a certain percentage of the people that do voice acting are aliens. So I don't know if you remember like Knights of the Old Republic where you talk to aliens and they speak alien gibberish.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of non-English speakers for all the alien races, but there's also plenty of humans too that do have, English voice, and it's all lip synced. So there's some more of that to be written and recorded.
Nice. I wasn't expecting that. I really wasn't. I thought everything was going to be written out and read, but that really increases
the
immersion of it. Yes. Well,
you gotta have goofy aliens, man.
Yeah. Well, Travis, we really, really thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk with you. We really appreciate it. We all look forward to the game, and we hope that the game is successful. We know it'll be successful because you made it sound amazing. I know the fans are going to love it, and we hope that your next game, whether it's a sequel or another new title, you consider us again coming on the show to talk about it.
That would be great. Thanks a lot for having us.
Thank you. Have a great one.
You too.
Torea alunrusho kila, zastud skuma, lagura dusta, giganto ashomo kola, krastu shofrei. Zo shaimus koreisha entozus, odaya akreno selanguile, an rento, an colissa. Un cartro mai vosunda vilco a un radish. Engo tras tu volon stelso, changitum raskin. Contame su, algo ganashei?